When the Rajasuya Yagna was complete and everybody had left, and only Duryodhana and Shakuni had decided to stay back for a while, a strange concern started troubling Yudhishthira. So just before Krishna Dvaipayana Veda Vyasa had left, Yudhishthira confronted him and in front of all his brothers asked him a question. He asked him, when Shishupala died, in the midst of all the strife that happened during the yagna, and Krishna was responsible for killing him, a lot of kings looked uncomfortable, some looked angry, some looked ready to seek vengeance. What consequences will this death have on us and the world? He asked Vyasa. And Vyasa replied, this has the potential to destroy the entire Kshatriya race. A regular Rajasuya that gets done without a lot of event and fanfare is already enough to cause fight among kings, but this has created two groups now, and I am worried that when something of this scale happens, it takes 13 years for its impact to be felt in the world. So for 13 years, somehow, the world will remain peaceful, and one day, you will become the center because of which the entire world will come together and the Kshatriya race will be eliminated, creating orphans and widows for as far as the eye can see. And when Yudhishthira finds out his destiny, he knows that he has performed not just the Rajasuya Yagna, but also the biggest mistake of his life. He says, I am ready to die. I don't deserve to live if I am going to be responsible for so much death and destruction. Arjuna convinces him that that is not the right way to go. And somehow good sense prevails and Yudhishthira decides to live on. Now, Duryodhana and Shakuni, who have been living in this amazing palace of the Pandavas, are finding themselves somewhat disillusioned by the power, the beauty, and the greatness that the Pandavas are spreading across. This palace is a palace full of illusions, and everywhere the eye can see, the usage of a crystal form of alum, Sphatika has created such wondrous sights that Duryodhana is stumbling and fumbling and making a fool of himself at every step of the way. One time, he thought there was water based on the shine from the alum stone and picked his clothes up so that they don't get wet. Turned out it was dry land. Another time, he mistook real water for alum and fell into it and wet his whole body and his new clothes. Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and many servants laughed at this. Now, for a normal person, this would look like a simple jest to a minor tragedy. Except the state of mind that Duryodhana was in, it felt like this was insult of the highest order targeted at him. As he continued moving around the palace, one time he banged into a wall thinking there was none. Another time he tried to push a door that turned out to not be a door and fell through it again. Overall, he made a big fool of himself an entire day and was frequently laughed at. The most important point here, though, is that Duryodhana is jealous. He's jealous of the riches that the Pandavas have collected even after being banished and sent to a barren land. He complains to Shakuni and says, after seeing this much success of my enemies, I can't live anymore and I am going to die. Shakuni convinces him that dying is not the answer, but also because they are so powerful now, because Yudhishthira is the emperor now with the support and promise of suzerainty by all the kings around the world, it is impossible to defeat him even if the gods in Indraloka came together to help them. But there was one way, said Shakuni. He told Yudhishthira is very fond of gambling, but he doesn't know how to gamble. On the other hand, I am a world-renowned expert in gambling. So I have an idea. Let's go back to Hastinapura. Convince your father, set up a place for gambling, and invite Yudhishthira. Let him come and join, and since he will not be able to say no, I will play on your behalf and win everything from them. In one day, you will be the master of all that the Pandavas have earned in these many years. This is music to Duryodhana's ears, and he goes back to Hastinapura and starts convincing his father Dhritarashtra to allow him to do this. In Khandava though, which is now slowly being called Indraprastha because it is as if Indraloka has come on this earth, Yudhishthira is in another predicament. While he has agreed to not die, even though he knows that he is going to be responsible for the death of millions, he has come to a conclusion that all the problems in this world are caused by the word no. So every time someone asks him anything, he just wants to say yes to it. And therefore, this eliminates the possibility of causing any disrespect or negativity in this world. Now, Shakuni does not know this, but he is going to take advantage of it all the same. When they reach back to Hastinapura, they start convincing Dhritarashtra, who immediately questions Duryodhana and says, I don't understand why you are jealous. You have everything. You are the Yuvaraja or the crown prince of my kingdom. You have learned everything from Kripacharya on Vedas and Arthashastra and Vedangas and Vedantas. You have learned Dhanurvidya from Dronacharya. You've been a student of Balarama, one of the greatest teachers of fighting with a gada. You have access to riches, you have access to power, and this kingdom is at your mercy, ready for you whenever you want to ascend the throne, and yet it looks like you are jealous of someone who has just started. Duryodhana says, you don't seem to understand, father. The riches that they have acquired in these past years, we will never be able to reach that far. And it's only a dumb king who is going to celebrate the success of an opponent. I am not a dumb king. And before you know it, the Pandavas will come and attack us. Duryodhana then goes on to describe in detail the gifts and tributes that the Pandavas have received from across the world. And then he goes on to describe about the Abhisheka which was performed and how people and sages and gods from celestials from all around the three worlds had come to perform this. And Duryodhana is basically enamored and envious of Yudhishthira's success. So he tells his father the only way to get at him is through Dyuta Krida or gambling. So we are going to build a beautiful sabha, a court where gambling will happen. All I'm looking for is your support in sending Vidura to fetch them here. Dhritarashtra says, I am going to consult with Vidura and ask him what he says. Duryodhana will have none of it. He says, what kind of a king asks for permission from the son of a dasi? He is your servant. He is supposed to do your bidding, not give you advice. It is kings like you, father, who destroy the morale of their children and cause them to be ruined in poverty. Dhritarashtra is agitated enough and instigated by Duryodhana. He just summons Vidura and tells him, go to Indraprastha and request Yudhishthira to come and join Duryodhana in a game of gambling. And before Vidura can say anything, Dhritarashtra says, this is a command. This is not a call for consultation. With no choice, Vidura goes to Indraprastha and invites Yudhishthira. In time, Yudhishthira will come. That fateful gambling game will happen, which will spell the ruin of Bharatavarsha as we know it. But that's a story for another day. Now, one of the key stories that we are aware of is how Draupadi laughed at Duryodhana. One of the most famous lines is that when Duryodhana falls into the water thinking it is flat land, Draupadi is standing there and she laughs and she says, "The blind son of a blind father." And this enrages Duryodhana so much that he decides that he needs to take revenge upon Draupadi. Nowhere in the core Mahabharata is this story mentioned. Draupadi was not even present there and she did not laugh at Duryodhana. One of the reasons I think this is done is eventually when the Dyuta Krida or the gambling game will happen and Draupadi is summarily dragged into the court and insulted by the Kauravas, this incident acts as almost justification, right? So if Draupadi had the audacity to laugh at the king, then of course the king will want to seek revenge and insult her in front of people also. Except the people who laughed at him were his own cousins, and the situation was genuinely silly and funny that any other person would have taken it in their stride. But Duryodhana, whose mind was driven by jealousy, thought of it like an insult worthy of destroying Pandavas. So there you have it. Did Draupadi laugh at Duryodhana? No, she didn't, because she was not even there.